She was the most powerful billionaire in the city, feared in boardrooms, respected on Wall Street, and completely alone. He was just a broke young man with holes in his shoes and a heart big enough. But neither of them knew that one rainy night would change everything. This is the story of how kindness turned into love. So just relax, get comfortable, and listen closely to this story.
The city of Chicago never slept. Lights shimmered across glass towers. Luxury cars whispered down wet streets. And high above it all, on the top floor of the tallest building downtown, sat a woman who owned more of the city than anyone knew. Her name was Isabella Hartley. At 36, she was one of the youngest billionaires in America. She owned tech companies, hotels, and entire blocks of real estate. Magazines called her the Iron Queen of Chicago. But no one knew the truth. Every night, when the meetings ended, when the assistants went home, when the city lights blurred into silence, she sat alone in her penthouse. No laughter, no warm voice calling her name, no one waiting for her, just silence and the soft hum of air conditioning. Isabella had learned early in life that love could disappear overnight. When she was 15, her parents died in a private jet crash. Relatives fought over her inheritance. Lawyers spoke to her more than family ever did. By the time she turned 21, she trusted no one. Not friends, not lovers, not even employees. Everyone in her mind wanted something from her. And most of the time, she was right. Across town, far from the shining towers and polished sidewalks, stood a small, run-down neighborhood. Cracked roads, flickering streetlights, corner stores with bars on the windows. This was where Daniel Reyes lived. He was 24, tall, lean, and always smiling, even when life gave him no reason to. Daniel worked 2 jobs. In the mornings, he washed dishes at a diner. At night, he stocked shelves at a grocery store. His paycheck barely covered rent for the tiny one-room apartment he shared with his younger sister, Sophia. Their parents had passed away years ago, and since then, Daniel had been everything to her: brother, father, protector. Every evening, no matter how tired he was, he came home with a smile. "How was school, Soph?" he'd ask, and she'd talk and laugh, and for a moment, their tiny apartment felt like the warmest place in the world. One evening, a cold autumn rain swept through the city. Isabella's black luxury sedan glided through downtown traffic. She had just left another exhausting meeting, another deal, another victory. But she didn't feel like a winner. She felt empty. "Take the long way home," she told her driver quietly. He nodded. Rain tapped against the tinted windows. Streetlights blurred into golden streaks. And then, the car suddenly slowed. "What is it?" Isabella asked. "There's someone in the road, ma'am," the driver replied. Isabella leaned forward. Through the rain, she saw a young man kneeling beside an old, homeless man. He was holding an umbrella over the stranger, while using his jacket to keep the man warm. Cars passed by. People hurried along sidewalks, but no one stopped, except him. "Pull over," Isabella said. The driver hesitated. "Ma'am, it's not safe." "Pull over." The car stopped at the curb. Isabella watched as the young man gently spoke to the homeless man. "It's okay, sir. The ambulance is coming. You're going to be fine." His voice was calm, kind, sincere, not forced, not fake, real. For a moment, Isabella felt something she hadn't felt in years: curiosity. She stepped out of the car, rain splashing around her heels. The young man looked up, surprised. "You shouldn't be out here, ma'am," he said politely. "It's pouring." She ignored the comment. "Do you know him?" The young man shook his head. "No." I just saw him collapse. You're getting soaked. He shrugged. It's just rain. Isabella noticed his shoes, old, worn out, the sole slightly peeling. And yet, he was giving his jacket to a stranger. Where's your umbrella? She asked. He smiled. I gave it to him. The homeless man coughed weakly. Sirens approached in the distance. Isabella's chest tightened. No one had ever given her something without expecting something back. Not since she was a child. But this stranger, he didn't even know who she was. And he didn't care. The ambulance pulled up. Paramedics rushed out, lifting the homeless man onto a stretcher. Good job keeping him warm, one of them said to Daniel. You probably saved his life. Daniel nodded, relieved. As the ambulance drove away, he stood there in the rain, soaked to the bone. Isabella reached into her purse and pulled out a thick stack of cash. Here, she said, for your trouble. Daniel looked at the money, then back at her. He shook his head. No, thank you. Isabella blinked. No. I didn't help him for money, he said gently. Anyone would have done the same. But Isabella knew that wasn't true. No one else had stopped. Daniel turned to leave. Wait, Isabella said. He paused. What's your name? Daniel. I'm Isabella. He nodded politely, clearly not recognizing her. No widened eyes, no sudden respect, no awkward flattery, just a simple nod. Well, it was nice meeting you, Isabella, he said. Have a good night. And then he walked away into the rain. Isabella stood frozen. No one had ever walked away from her like that. No one. And for the first time in years, she felt her heart beating faster. Not from stress, not from business, but from something new. That night, as Isabella sat alone in her penthouse, she couldn't stop thinking about the young man in the rain, the one who refused her money, the one who didn't care who she was. And deep down, she had a strange feeling that their story was only just beginning. The next morning, the rain was gone. Sunlight poured across the city, bouncing off glass towers and busy streets. But inside Isabella Hartley's penthouse, the mood was quiet, almost restless. She stood near the floor-to-ceiling window, holding a cup of untouched coffee. Her assistant's voice echoed from behind her. Your 9 a.m. board call is in 10 minutes, Ms. Hartley. Isabella didn't move. Instead, she asked a question that surprised even herself. Did we get any updates from the hospital last night? Her assistant blinked. Hospital, ma'am? The man from the street, Isabella said. The one who collapsed. Oh, yes, he's stable. Mild hypothermia and dehydration. He should recover. Isabella nodded slowly. That's good, she murmured. But that wasn't what occupied her mind. It was the young man, Daniel, his calm voice, his warm eyes, the way he refused her money without hesitation. It didn't make sense. Everyone took her money. Everyone. The board meeting started on time. Executives appeared on a giant screen, each in their own office across the world. Quarterly profits are up by 12%, one of them said. The European expansion is on track. Isabella nodded automatically. Proceed. But her mind wasn't in the meeting. Instead, she remembered the way Daniel had stood in the rain, holding that umbrella over a stranger, not caring about himself, not caring about who was watching. Ms. Hartley? A voice called. She blinked. Yes? We need your approval on the acquisition. There was a pause. Normally, Isabella would ask 10 questions, review every number, challenge every assumption. But today, approved, she said quietly. The executives exchanged surprised looks. The meeting ended 10 minutes early. Her assistant approached cautiously. "Are you feeling all right, ma'am?" Isabella didn't answer right away. Instead, she picked up her coat. "Cancel my afternoon meetings." Her assistant froze. "All of them?" "Yes." "May I ask why?" Isabella hesitated. Then, softly, "I have somewhere to be." An hour later, Isabella's car rolled slowly down the same street where she had seen Daniel the night before. The driver glanced in the mirror. "Are we looking for someone, ma'am?" Isabella stared out the window. "I'm not sure." People rushed along the sidewalks. Workers carried coffee cups. Delivery trucks blocked traffic, but no sign of him. "Pull over near that diner," she said suddenly. The driver parked beside a small, slightly worn-down restaurant. The sign above the door read, "Sonny's Diner." It wasn't the kind of place Isabella ever visited, but something inside her told her to go in. The bell above the diner door chimed as she stepped inside. The place was warm, cozy, filled with the smell of coffee, butter, and syrup. A waitress approached with a smile. "Good morning. Sit anywhere you like." Isabella nodded and slid into a booth by the window. She looked around. Truck drivers, construction workers, a mother feeding her toddler pancakes. And then, in the far corner of the diner, behind a mountain of dishes and steam, she saw him, Daniel. He was laughing at something another worker said. His sleeves rolled up, hands moving quickly as he washed plates. He looked tired, but happy. Isabella's heart skipped. A few minutes later, Daniel stepped out from the kitchen carrying a tray. He placed a plate in front of a customer, then froze when he saw Isabella. "Hey, you're the lady from last night." She gave a small smile. "Yes." He wiped his hands on his apron. "Is everything okay? Did something happen to the man?" "He's recovering," she said. "You helped save him." Daniel's face brightened. "That's good to hear." There was a brief silence. Then he chuckled. "You look very different in daylight." Isabella raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Less mysterious," he said with a grin. For a moment, she almost laughed. Almost. "Can I get you something?" Daniel asked. Isabella glanced at the menu. She had eaten in 5-star restaurants across the world, but somehow, this felt more intimidating. "Just coffee," she said, coming right up. A minute later, he returned with a steaming mug. "On the house," he said. Isabella frowned slightly. "You don't have to do that." He shrugged. "You stood in the rain last night. That counts for something." She stared at the cup. No one had given her something for free in years. "Daniel," she said softly. "Yeah? Why did you refuse the money last night?" He leaned against the booth. "Because it didn't feel right." "Why not?" He thought for a moment. "My mom used to say, if you only help people when there's money involved, you're not really helping. You're just working." Isabella felt something tighten in her chest. "That's a nice way to look at it." He smiled. She was a nice person. Before Isabella could say more, the diner door swung open. A man in a business suit stormed inside. "Daniel," he barked. Daniel's face fell. "Mr. Collins, I told you I'd pay next week." The man crossed his arms. "You said that last week, too. Rent's overdue." Isabella listened carefully. "I just need a few more days," Daniel said. "My sister's school fees." "I don't care about your excuses," the landlord snapped. "If I don't get the money by Friday, you're out." The entire diner went quiet. Daniel nodded slowly. "I understand." The man turned and left. Isabella looked at Daniel. You're being evicted? He forced a smile. It's nothing. I'll figure it out. But you work 2 jobs. Yeah, he said lightly. Sometimes life still isn't enough. For a moment, Isabella didn't see the cheerful young man from the night before. She saw exhaustion, pressure, fear. But he still smiled, still stood tall, still served coffee like everything was fine. Daniel, she said carefully. What? What if someone helped you? He shook his head immediately. No charity. It wouldn't be charity. Then what would it be? She hesitated. I could offer you a job. He raised an eyebrow. Doing what? Something better than washing dishes. He studied her face. You don't even know me. Isabella looked into his eyes. Maybe I'd like to. Daniel crossed his arms, unsure whether to trust this elegant stranger, a woman who spoke like she owned the world. And in truth, she did. But what he didn't know was that accepting her offer would pull him into a life of wealth, danger, and secrets that neither of them were ready for. Daniel stood beside the booth, arms crossed, still unsure whether to trust the elegant stranger in front of him. A job offer from a woman he had only met twice. It sounded too good to be true. And in his experience, things that sounded too good usually came with a price. What kind of job are we talking about? He asked. Isabella stirred her coffee slowly. Office assistant. Something simple. Better pay. Better hours. Daniel frowned slightly. You don't even know my qualifications. She met his gaze. I know enough. He chuckled. Well, I don't have a college degree, no fancy resume, and I definitely don't own a suit like yours. Isabella didn't smile. That doesn't matter to me. Daniel studied her carefully. She didn't look like someone who was joking or trying to trick him. She looked serious. But still, something felt off. What company is this? He asked. There was a small pause. Isabella hesitated. Just for a second. Hartley Group. Daniel's eyes widened. Wait, the Hartley Group? She nodded once. The tech company? The hotels? The skyscraper downtown? Yes. Daniel let out a slow breath. That's huge. He leaned back slightly. So, you work there? Isabella looked down at her coffee. I run it. For a full 5 seconds, Daniel didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink. Then he laughed. Okay, that's a good one. I'm serious, she said calmly. Daniel stopped laughing. He looked at her again. Really looked this time. The expensive coat, the flawless posture, the quiet confidence. You're that Isabella Hartley? Yes. He swallowed. The billionaire? She nodded again. Silence filled the booth. Daniel slowly sat down across from her. Wow, he said quietly. I just gave a billionaire free coffee. For the first time, Isabella actually smiled. Most people reacted to her identity in one of 2 ways. Either they became overly polite, or suddenly very interested in her money. But Daniel, he just scratched the back of his neck. That's kind of embarrassing, he said. Why? Because I complained about rent in front of you. You probably pay more for lunch than I make in a month. Isabella's smile faded slightly. That's not something to be embarrassed about. Daniel shrugged. It's just life. He didn't look jealous or bitter, just honest. And somehow, that made Isabella respect him even more. So, Daniel said, leaning forward, you were serious about the job? Yes. What's the catch? There isn't one. He narrowed his eyes playfully. There's always a catch. She shook her head. You'd have a desk, regular hours, health benefits, and a salary that could cover your rent easily. Daniel stared at the table, It sounded like a dream. No more double shifts, no more worrying about eviction, more time with his sister. But something inside him hesitated. "Why me?" he asked softly. Isabella didn't answer immediately, because the truth was, she wasn't even sure herself. Finally, she said, "Because you're the first person I've met in years who didn't try to get something from me." Daniel looked up. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the noise of the diner faded away. "Can I think about it?" Daniel asked. "Of course. I need to talk to my sister first." Isabella nodded. "That's a good idea." He stood up. "I finish here at noon, then I go to the grocery store shift at 4. She reached into her purse and handed him a simple white card. "My number is on that. Call me when you decide." Daniel took the card carefully, like it was something fragile. "Thank you," he said, and this time, his voice carried real emotion. That evening at the tiny apartment later that night, Daniel climbed the narrow stairs to his apartment. The hallway smelled faintly of old paint and cooking oil. Inside, Sophia sat at the small table, doing homework. "You're late," she said without looking up. "Yeah, busy day." He dropped his bag and sat across from her. "You won't believe what happened." She looked up. "What?" "I met a billionaire." Sophia blinked. "Like, on TV?" "No, in real life." She squinted at him. "Did you hit your head at work?" He laughed. "No, seriously. Her name is Isabella Hartley." Sophia's eyes widened. "The tech lady? The one on the magazine cover at school?" "That's the one." "And you met her?" "Twice." Sophia leaned forward, excited. "What did she say?" Daniel hesitated. Then he pulled out the card. "She offered me a job." Sophia gasped. "A real job? In her company?" Sophia's face lit up like the sun. "Daniel, that's amazing." He wasn't smiling. "What if it's a mistake?" he said quietly. "What if I mess it up?" Sophia reached across the table and took his hand. "You helped a stranger in the rain. You work harder than anyone I know. If she offered you a job, it's because you deserve." Her voice softened. "And maybe this is our chance." Daniel looked at her, at the tiny apartment, the peeling paint, the flickering light, and for the first time in months, he allowed himself to imagine a different future. The next morning, Daniel stood outside the diner, holding the card. His hands were slightly sweaty. He took a deep breath and dialed the number. It rang once, twice. Then her voice answered. "Hello? Hi, it's Daniel." There was a small pause, then a soft warmth in her tone. "I was hoping you'd call." He smiled without realizing it. "I'll take the job." 2 days later, Daniel would step into the tallest building in the city, wearing the only suit he could afford. What he didn't know was that behind those glass doors waited a world of luxury, power, jealous rivals, and a secret about Isabella's past that could destroy everything between them. The morning sun reflected off the glass walls of Hartley Tower, turning the building into a pillar of light that could be seen from blocks away. Daniel stood across the street, staring up at it. It felt unreal. Just 3 days ago, he had been washing dishes in a noisy diner, counting coins to pay rent. And now, he was about to walk into one of the most powerful companies in the country. He looked down at his suit. Simple. Gray. A little loose at the shoulders. But it was clean, and it was the best he could afford. He took a deep breath. "For Sophia," he whispered. And then, he crossed the street. The glass doors slid open silently. Cool air brushed against his face as he stepped inside. The lobby was enormous. White marble floors, A tall ceiling that seemed to stretch forever. People in expensive suits moving quickly, holding tablets and coffee cups. Everything looked polished, perfect, fast. Daniel suddenly felt like he didn't belong. A security guard approached him. "Good morning, sir. Can I help you?" "Yes," Daniel said nervously. "My name is Daniel Reyes. It's my first day." The guard checked his tablet, then his expression softened. "Welcome, Mr. Reyes." He handed Daniel a sleek badge. "Take elevator C to the 48th floor. Miss Hartley is expecting you." Daniel nodded. "Thank you." As he walked toward the elevators, his heart pounded harder with every step. The elevator doors opened on the 48th floor. Daniel stepped out and froze. The entire office was surrounded by glass. From up here, the city looked small. Cars crawled like ants. Buildings looked like toy blocks. He had never seen the world from this height before. "Mr. Reyes?" He turned. A young woman with a tablet smiled politely. "I'm Claire, Ms. Hartley's assistant. She asked me to show you around." Daniel nodded. "Nice to meet you." She led him through the office, rows of sleek desks, quiet employees typing, soft light reflecting off modern furniture. Everything felt calm, almost silent. "This will be your desk," Claire said. Daniel stared at it. A brand new computer, comfortable chair, even a small green plant. It looked nicer than anything he had ever owned. "For me?" he asked softly. Claire smiled. "Yes, welcome to the team." At the far end of the office, Daniel noticed a large glass door. Behind it, a private office. And inside, he saw her, Isabella. She stood near the window, looking out over the city. The sunlight framed her like a painting. For a moment, Daniel forgot to breathe. Claire followed his gaze. "Ms. Hartley will see you now." Daniel stepped into the office. It was elegant, but simple. A large desk, a few bookshelves, and the most breathtaking view of the city. Isabella turned around. "Good morning, Daniel." "Good morning." She studied him. "You look different today." He smiled. "So do you." Her eyebrow lifted. "Oh?" "Less mysterious in the rain, more like someone who owns half the skyline." "For the first time?" Isabella laughed softly. It wasn't the polite, controlled smile people saw in interviews. It was real, and it warmed the entire room. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "A little," Daniel admitted. "This place feels like another planet." She walked to the window. "When I first came here, I felt the same way." He looked surprised. "You?" She nodded. "But I didn't have someone helping me. I had to fight for every step." Her voice softened. "And the higher I climbed, the lonelier it became." Daniel didn't know what to say, so he spoke from the heart. "Well, maybe you don't have to be lonely anymore." She turned to him slowly. Something in her expression changed. Not business, not power, something softer. The morning sun reflected off the glass walls of Hartley Tower, turning the building into a pillar of light that could be seen from blocks away. Daniel stood across the street, staring up at it. It felt unreal. Just 3 days ago, he had been washing dishes in a noisy diner, counting coins to pay rent. And now, he was about to walk into one of the most powerful companies in the country. He looked down at his suit. Simple. Gray. A little loose at the shoulders. But it was clean, and it was the best he could afford. He took a deep breath. "For Sophia," he whispered. And then, he crossed the street. The glass doors slid open silently. Cool air brushed against his face as he stepped inside. The lobby was enormous. White marble floors, a tall ceiling that seemed to stretch forever, people in expensive suits moving quickly, holding tablets and coffee cups. Everything looked polished, perfect, fast. Daniel suddenly felt like he didn't belong. A security guard approached him. "Good morning, sir. Can I help you?" "Yes," Daniel said nervously. "My name is Daniel Reyes. It's my first day." The guard checked his tablet, then his expression softened. "Welcome, Mr. Reyes." He handed Daniel a sleek badge. "Take elevator C to the 48th floor. Miss Hartley is expecting you." Daniel nodded. "Thank you." As he walked toward the elevators, his heart pounded harder with every step. The elevator doors opened on the 48th floor. Daniel stepped out and froze. The entire office was surrounded by glass. From up here, the city looked small. Cars crawled like ants. Buildings looked like toy blocks. He had never seen the world from this height before. "Mr. Reyes?" He turned. A young woman with a tablet smiled politely. "I'm Claire, Ms. Hartley's assistant. She asked me to show you around." Daniel nodded. "Nice to meet you." She led him through the office, rows of sleek desks, quiet employees typing, soft light reflecting off modern furniture. Everything felt calm, almost silent. "This will be your desk," Claire said. Daniel stared at it. A brand new computer, comfortable chair, even a small green plant. It looked nicer than anything he had ever owned. "For me?" he asked softly. Claire smiled. "Yes, welcome to the team." At the far end of the office, Daniel noticed a large glass door. Behind it, a private office. And inside, he saw her, Isabella. She stood near the window, looking out over the city. The sunlight framed her like a painting. For a moment, Daniel forgot to breathe. Claire followed his gaze. "Ms. Hartley will see you now." Daniel stepped into the office. It was elegant, but simple. A large desk, a few bookshelves, and the most breathtaking view of the city. Isabella turned around. "Good morning, Daniel." "Good morning." She studied him. "You look different today." He smiled. "So do you." Her eyebrow lifted. "Oh?" "Less mysterious in the rain, more like someone who owns half the skyline." "For the first time?" Isabella laughed softly. It wasn't the polite, controlled smile people saw in interviews. It was real, and it warmed the entire room. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "A little," Daniel admitted. "This place feels like another planet." She walked to the window. "When I first came here, I felt the same way." He looked surprised. "You?" She nodded. "But I didn't have someone helping me. I had to fight for every step." Her voice softened. "And the higher I climbed, the lonelier it became." Daniel didn't know what to say, so he spoke from the heart. "Well, maybe you don't have to be lonely anymore." She turned to him slowly. Something in her expression changed. Not business, not power, something softer. Later that afternoon, Daniel was organizing files at his desk. He noticed a small envelope placed beside his keyboard. Inside was a handwritten note. "Lunch break is important. Don't skip it. Isabella." And attached to it was a meal voucher for the company restaurant. Daniel smiled. It was such a small gesture, but no boss had ever done something like that for him. Not once. That evening, as employees began leaving the building, Daniel stepped onto the rooftop terrace. He needed air, time to think. The city stretched out in golden light. And then, he heard footsteps. Isabella walked toward him. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. "Not at all." They stood side by side, watching the sunset. "No meetings?" he asked. "For once, no." There was a quiet pause. Then she said softly, "Thank you for saying yes to this job." Daniel shrugged. "You gave me a chance." She shook her head. "No, you gave me something first." He looked at her. What was that? She hesitated, then whispered, "Hope." The word hung in the air, soft, honest, powerful. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He didn't know what the future would bring, but in that moment, standing beside the richest woman in the city, watching the sun disappear behind the skyline, he realized something. Sometimes, one small act of kindness could change two lives forever. Weeks later, Daniel's sister was smiling more than ever. The rent was paid, food filled their fridge, laughter returned to their tiny apartment, and high above the city, in a penthouse once filled with silence, Isabella no longer sat alone. Because sometimes, love doesn't arrive in limousines. It doesn't wear expensive suits, and it doesn't care about bank accounts. Sometimes, love shows up in the rain, holding an umbrella over a stranger. Now tell me, if you were Isabella, would you trust a man who had nothing but a kind heart? Or do you think love between two completely different worlds can never truly last? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear your opinion. And if this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that stay with you long after they end.